I'm Jeremy Newmark. I'd like to welcome members of the public, colleagues and officers to this meeting this evening. I'll be chairing the meeting, and to manage the business as efficiently as possible, I'll ask people to speak one at a time to ensure that their contributions are properly heard. Therefore, please do not speak unless invited to do so. The fire evacuation procedure is the usual one, and everybody in the room is already familiar with that, so I shan't repeat it. Agenda item 1, communications and apologies. There are none. Agenda item 2, presentation of petitions. None have been received. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare? I see none. Agenda item 5, minutes of the previous meeting. Are members happy to sign the minutes of the meeting held on 12th of November, which was the regular cabinet meeting, and that was the extraordinary cabinet meeting to discuss LGR, and the subsequent meeting, which was the regular cabinet meeting? That's agreed. Agenda item 6, recommendations from scrutiny committees. There are none. Agenda item 7, key decisions. We have no key decisions on the agenda this evening. Agenda item 8 is non-key decisions, the first of which is 8.1, the Hertsmere Vision Performance Report, Quarter 2, 2025 to 2026, and I shall invite Councillor Gray to present.
Thank you, Chair. The report in front of you recommends that Cabinet reviews and notes the quarterly performance indicators for Quarter 2 of 25-26. Appendix A provides progress against the corporate plan over the last quarter, setting out our narrative summary and achievements, along with performance indicators from the key performance indicator set against each priority area of the vision. Obviously, in response to the recommendations of the Corporate Peer Challenge, benchmarking information compares our performance with that of our nearest neighbours, a group of councillors who share similar characteristics to us in terms of size, population, etc. It has been provided where that information is available. In addition, the performance indicators table index charts to show variances against target, with blue lines illustrating positive variances, red illustrating negative variances from the target. Each quarter, this is demonstrated each quarter over time, so we can see the longer timeline and monitor overall performance better. The main body of the report contains further information on indicators which have fallen into the red and the amber range during that period, the percentage of household waste sent for reuse, recycle or composting, a number of missed waste collections per 100,000 collections, percentage of invoices paid on time, and the potential percentage of council tax collected, and percentage of non-domestic rates collected. Obviously, I have other cabinet members here whose area those responsibilities fall under, but I'll happily take some questions now if you want.
Thank you. Take this opportunity to welcome visiting members, Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Cohen, and I will take comments from visiting members first. Councillor Cohen.
Thank you. We recognise 79% of these are green, but we have 14% that are red, and it's 2 of these that I wish to speak. Because it makes one thing painfully clear in this report, and that is our waste and recycling services is not going in the right direction for residents and for our environment, despite what you've been telling us for the past year and a half. E192 is red again. We're stuck at 43.5% against the target of 49%. Saying that we're in line with the national average is not what we want to have. Councillor Newmark keeps talking about us being an aspirational council. Being national average, is that good enough? It is not. People have put up with years of changes, new bins, new schedules, new rules, all on the promise that we're going to get higher recycling. And now what we're doing, we're commissioning another report, another study to work out what to do next. I don't think that's progress. It tells residents there's no real plan to turn things around, and we're having to go out to them again to see how we can improve them. And then more importantly is the missed bin collections. We are at 111 missed bins per 100,000, almost double the council's own target. This report tries to highlight improvement compared to last quarter, but residents do not measure their lives in quarters. All they want is their bins to be collected when the councils say they will be, and that's what our emails keep saying to us. They're not being done. I'm blaming the scale of change, the rerouting of homes, new food waste, new tipping points, new garden waste charges. It doesn't wash. Big changes should come with better planning, better communications, not more excuses. Residents keep telling us, and they make it very
Could
clear,
wind up, please.
people have had bins missed again and again while being told it's just transitional. What we want to know is what the plan is, when things will improve, and how you'll make sure it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so just to reiterate some points, I'm really pleased that in the Hertsmere News that we had the positive suggestion of adding pizza boxes and some other graphics into this communication, which I think will really help just that kind of unclear clarification that some residents were complaining about in our inboxes. So I think that is a real big step forward, because I think our residents do really want to recycle. It's just that we need to sometimes give them some extra additional tools where we see it going wrong. And I know my email inbox is still very much filled with missed bin collections across all streams at the moment, food waste, mixed recycling. So whatever we can do to make it easier, I think we should do. I do have a question for the Cabinet Member and portfolio holder. We've had the Hertsmere News delivered. I know residents are going to have some questions across Facebook and email about what they can do with Christmas trees, wrapping paper, Christmas cards, all those kind of seasonal waste goods, additional cardboard that they may have. So are we going to do any other kind of communication to support them on how to recycle and be sustainable over Christmas? Thank you.
Thank you. Look, I'll remind members this is a report and discussion on the KPIs, not on waste and recycling, but I'm happy to allow that question. And I'm sure Councillor Richards will address that in due course. But can I invite comments from Cabinet members on the substance of the report? Councillor Gray, you want to come back?
Yeah, just to say that, look, obviously we're fully aware and we're not hiding behind the fact that some of our areas need improvement. In terms of the kind of number of missed bins, then you are seeing an improvement in there. So I totally refute what you're saying there, Councillor Cohen. It wasn't great at the beginning, it is getting better, and we're seeing that road to recovery after introducing major service overhauls. On a positive note, though, I'm very pleased to see that you used the leader's name correctly at this Cabinet meeting, which is always welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, it's also correct that this administration introduced an additional new free weekly bin collection, and the most significant change that the previous administration made was to remove one of the weekly bin collections, which I also think is significant progress in the right direction. Further comments from Cabinet members? Councillor Shenton.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to mention that Fin 7 and Fin 9, is it 9? 8, which are red, but this is the collection of council tax and the collection of business rates. But underlying that is actually a story of considerable progress, and the money that we collect of historic basis is not counted in these statistics. So by the time that we look at how much money we've actually collected after a couple of years for late payments, we are actually above our targets. Thank you.
Councillor Richards.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to sort of address the points. So firstly, in reverse order, Councillor Sullivan, thank you for the suggestion in terms of extra support and communications around Christmas. I can take that away and have a chat with the officers and see what we can do. But broadly speaking, you know, I think it's there is actually usually we do usually advise via social media in terms of wrapping paper, for example, that is too sparkly, can't be recycled. You know, ideally, the packaging when it comes to cardboard, it's fine. It's within the dry recycling. Christmas trees, if you have a garden bin, can be chopped down, placed in that garden, is garden waste. Alternatively, if you don't have the subscription, the trees can be taken to the recycling centres across the borough. So in April, we introduced the most significant changes to our waste collection operation for over a decade. The changes were necessary because of government legislation, new county council disposal contracts, and the need to reroute our vehicles efficiently and effectively. This entailed new rounds and new staff. And in terms of sort of Councillor Cohen's comments around years of changes, so this administration has made one set of changes. We made that set of changes at one time, because that is ultimately, introducing various changes over different periods of time is not the way to do things. But when you say years of changes, then you will also be including changes that were made under your previous administration, such as the black bin policy to restrict that to one bin per household was a policy that was decided during your administration. We have enforced that policy decision. So things like that are, I think a little bit disingenuous to repeat. In terms of the overall, bear with me, you mentioned aspirational. We are absolutely aspirational. These changes, when taken together and over time, will increase recycling rates. The challenge that we have, and this is with our neighbouring authorities and in fact every collecting authority across the country. So these are good news stories. So firstly, extended producer responsibility was brought in by actually your government initially and followed through by the Labour government. And extended producer responsibility, in layman's terms, is a mechanism by which the manufacturers are incentivised to produce less packaging and include less packaging with their goods. So that is starting to work its way through the system already, which means that we are seeing less packaging presented at the curbside. So ultimately, we have to look at medium to long term, the KPIs that us as a borough and our neighbours look at will need to evolve over that time in terms of recycling rates, because that mix will be evolving. The composition analysis, so I think you hinted at this, in terms of in the new year, we, alongside our neighbouring districts and boroughs as well, will conduct a composition analysis to find out really what's under the hood in terms of what's in the bins, and that will help inform us longer term. We never rest on our laurels. We always seek to improve things. Things are most importantly moving. They are absolutely moving in the right direction in terms of the mist bins. We haven't yet had obviously current quarter is ongoing, and then in the new year we will be able to report on that. But the trend is absolutely that mist bins are reducing. When you think about how many bins are collected curbside across all streams, we are still talking, when you are looking at sort of in percentage terms, an incredibly small percentage of bins that are missed. So our teams do an excellent job, and I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, just one final point I just want to make. Although it's very easy to get caught up in percentages and colours of rag ratings, since the food waste collection was launched and up until July 2025, over 516 tonnes of food waste has gone to be recycled, producing clean green energy along with a byproduct to fertilise farmers' fields that didn't end up in landfill, and I think that's a stellar achievement.
Thank you, Councillor Gray, and also thank you to Hilary Shade, Liz Gore and the team for once again compiling and presenting the KPI data. I do think it's also worth mentioning that what we haven't done as an administration, where there are areas that we know need attention, is what our predecessors did quite literally every few months where targets were not being met, particularly in the areas of housing, planning determination, deadlines and waste and recycling, where they constantly rejigged the targets to ensure more green hexagons. And, I think that we've taken a much more sort of transparent and honest approach. We have introduced a whole new service on waste and recycling, and I think that ultimately the goal we're aiming for is one in which we have a cleaner and greener borough, and it may be that it's slightly painful getting from A to B, particularly given our growth and growing number of residences that have to be provided with the waste and recycling service. But I think those numbers are looking healthy and will only get healthier. Also, at this time of year, we obviously take the opportunity to thank our waste and recycling staff who keep the service running through the inclement weather and the Christmas and New Year holiday period, and that's something that I know everybody here and our residents are deeply grateful for. Agenda item 2. So is it on this item?
Yeah, if I may, I just wanted to also point out I'm really impressed to see the percentage of telephone calls answered within 30 seconds is at 96% on this report. I think that's really a testament to our customer services team really working hard to make sure that if there is a problem and residents need to call us, that they're getting quick responses and getting answered, because in the past, many residents have had a lot of frustration with calling up the council and, not being able to get through, not being able to speak to somebody and actually fix their problem. So the fact that those people are actually getting through to even tell us about their problems means that, we might be recording certain problems more, but actually at least we're recording them in the first place. They're not being kind of lost with people just giving up trying to even tell us about them. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We'll now move on to agenda item 8.2, response to recommendations from the Policy Review Committee, scrutiny review of communications campaigns. This falls under my portfolio, and also being joined by Hilary Shade, who is the relevant Assistant Director. I understand that Councillor Cohen, as the lead member of the Task and Finish group, wants to present the findings. We did this briefly when the report first came to Cabinet just under 8 weeks ago, that we've agreed that he will refresh our memories, and I've agreed I think have an extended period of 5 minutes to present. So, Councillor Cohen, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Newmark, and I appreciate that very much. So this isn't actually to present the findings of the report, because you've been considering that for the past 8 weeks, I'm sure. This is to speak about your views on the recommendations. And we undertook this not as a paper exercise, as you know, is because of the experience of our residents and our councillors. We have been told by residents over the past few months, before we did the Task and Finish, that they felt confused, frustrated, and sometimes misled when services changed or when high-profile issues arose. And councillors too were telling us they've been left trying to answer questions with the right information. We didn't have it, and that's why we carried out the review. And your report and your reply accept some of these points, especially on staffing. But on the core issues of governance and culture of communications, it mostly says business as usual as the answer. Structured member input is dismissed by the report, what your answer is, as designed by committee, and communications, we think, are still being treated as an afterthought rather than the essential part of decision-making we wanted them to be. Recommendation 1, which you said is agreed, but it was about ensuring that all councillors are properly briefed when services change or we have incidents that occur. The response says this is completed and Cabinet members already do this, but if that were true, we wouldn't have needed this review, because evidence clearly showed that members were not getting timely, usable information, and misinformation in some cases was spreading. Residents ended up asking the councillors who didn't have the facts, and we wanted this fixed and that's why we did the report, through clear constitutional guidance and expectations and agreement to our recommendations so that no one will be left in the dark, our residents or our councillors. Recommendation 2 proposed a light touch members panel for communications. It was light touch. It wouldn't micromanage operations, that was very clear. It would simply give cross-party feedback on clarity and completeness of major resident-facing materials like Hertsmere's news. Our review found mistakes like wrong phone numbers, unclear recycling instructions, and incomplete service updates. And this one is a prime example, the one that's just come out. When is this coming out for? For members to read just before Christmas. Is there any mention, as Councillor Sullivan brought up, about recycling of cards, wrapping papers, trees, etc.? No mention in the pictures. And that is the one thing people will ask. That's what we would have been able to do. That was what this light touch members panel was for. There were options we made to make it manageable using an existing forum or create a small time-limited group. Instead, you just rejected the idea, leaving no structured way for councillors to contribute insights and risking these same errors repeating. Recommendations 3A and 3B ask for practical changes. First, every major project has a clear point when corporate communications will be fully briefed. And second, all decisions and updates would include a short communications considerations section in the report, just like they already include finance, equalities or environmental implications. It doesn't mean that communications will take over every report as stated. It just ensures the authors consider, when writing the reports and bringing in the tasks, how decisions will be explained to residents and when specialist input is needed. I think the response weakens this. Communications, it says, will only be slightly cited informally and only high-risk issues may get flagged. It's actually weaker than what the evidence shows is necessary to our task and finish. Recommendation 4 is about resources, and we welcome your agreement that more communications capacity is needed. That's obvious. Our service is under pressure, and future demands, especially with LGR, will only increase this. This should be seen as an invest to save measure. Better communications, as we all know, reduces calls, complaints, and protects our reputation, which is why we brought in this task and finish scrutiny review to do that. We need a firm commitment to a specific costed proposal for the extra housing capacity, with external support only being used where it adds value. So, Councillor Newmark, in summary, this review was prompted by real problems affecting real people, and even Hertsmere News this time shows it. The recommendations were all practical and evidence-based. You, Cabinet, has the chance, please, to go beyond merely noting them and instead please make visible change by updating what we recommend and briefing expectations under Recommendation 1. Please reconsider the light touch mechanism for member input on major communications like this. Fully implement, please, Recommendations 3A and 3B with the communication sections in all the reports and treating the extra communications post as a strategic investment, not just the optional extra. Doing these things will show residents that the lessons of recent communication problems have been learnt and that our scrutiny can lead to meaningful change.
Thank you, Councillor Cohen. I'm now going to talk to the report, and then I'll sort of go back to the format of asking visiting members and Cabinet members to comment. Thank you for your words, Councillor Cohen, and thank you to the members of the Task and Finish Group for their work. Look, you talk about spreading misinformation, and I think that your remarks are actually a very good example of how one can spread misinformation, because actually the Cabinet has either agreed or partially agreed to all but one of the recommendations of the Task and Finish Group. But listening to what you said always creates the impression that it's been thrown into the long grass in its entirety or rejected in its entirety. This is actually a far wider canvas of agreement with a member Task and Finish Group than I ever recall seeing under the previous administration, where huge swathes of recommendations from scrutiny Task and Finish Groups were rejected on a regular basis. Look, the reality here is that in terms of your first recommendation, it really doesn't recommend anything that doesn't already happen, either as part of ongoing operational protocol around the way that Cabinet members operate with their portfolios, or as responsibilities that are already hardwired into the Constitution. So, I mean, yes, we've agreed it, but we've pointed out that this is already happening on a day-to-day basis. Cabinet members do engage with chief officers and heads of service and sort of officers at other levels in the staff pyramid, as it were, on their issues on a daily basis. And I think anybody with any familiarity of the way that the council is run, and the way that members engage with officers know that to be a reality. Councillor Cohen, Councillor Sullivan, you, together with other members of your group, are regularly in touch with Cabinet members in which they act as a point of contact on issues that are relevant to residents in your ward. It's very difficult to see how it's possible to suggest that that's in some way not happening. All Cabinet members are in touch with ward councillors pretty much on a daily basis and responding. So I'm absolutely satisfied that our response, that first recommendation is both accepted, agreed and already happening, is solid. In terms of the establishment of a member panel for communications, you used the phrase light touch. If the recommendation was just for a members panel. Look, we're not in the business of increasing bureaucracy for the sake of increasing bureaucracy. We have a very clear directive from the LGA peer review that this council already has far too many member panels. They've asked us to embark upon a process, as you know, we discussed this at the Constitution Member Development Panel, for reducing our number of member panels. So it would be entirely inconsistent with that to set up another members panel, especially one that would duplicate processes already in place. What your recommendation sought to do was create another bureaucratic touch points that would add more friction, take more officer time and resource when it comes to getting communications products and communications assets signed off. It's not the role of members, be it in the form of panels or any other form, to be involved in operational matters on a day-to-day basis. It's the role of members to be involved in strategy, tone, direction and so on. And I'm absolutely confident, as are my Cabinet colleagues, that we have plenty of other opportunities as members at all levels in the Council to set that tone and direction and strategy for messaging. It seems to me that perhaps there were some members on this panel that actually want to sort of insert themselves as mini editors of things like Hertsmere News, and the sort of nitpicking we're seeing that, well, this could have been in, this shouldn't have been in, this could have been done differently, is exactly what we might see if a members panel of that nature was constituted, whereas it's always open to members at any time to come to the relevant Cabinet member or officers and say, you've got a Christmas edition of Hertsmere News coming up, would you consider putting this, that or the other in it? It certainly doesn't need a members panel for that, and I think that there was clear feedback from officers that this was endangering the very clear and distinct operational and strategic boundaries between officers and members, and actually would have been in direct conflict with our existing scheme of delegation that all members, including yourselves and those who sat on the Task and Finish group, voted for at annual council at the start of each year. So we make no apologies for not accepting that particular recommendation. On recommendation 3A, in terms of the ability of the comms function to provide direct interventions at specific points in the timeline on a project-by-project basis. The reason this has been partially agreed is because this already happens. You use the terminology, Councillor Cohen, of, well, that happens informally. It doesn't happen informally. It happens in the context of formal meetings and engagement between senior officers, heads of service and cabinet members over the course of any particular project. Those meetings are noted and documented, but the nature of the variety of different projects that we're involved in as a council means that it would be invidious and probably counterproductive to do what Task and Finish Group suggested, which was to identify a generic specific point at each project where that engagement and interaction would happen. That's not how projects get delivered. We're an agile organisation that configures project delivery in a way that's aligned with the nature of the project itself, and that differs. What I would say is that we have approved and committed to resourcing and establishing the new corporate management, the corporate project management office, the GRIP function, and that will give us an enhanced opportunity to ensure that during the project initiation phase and the delivery phase, that there is a formal, monitored engagement with comms, and I think that will, in effect, actually achieve what you're asking for and what you're looking for. And what I would urge you to do is to watch the progress of the rollout of that corporate project management office, and perhaps we'll have a conversation a few months down the line and see how it is engaging and where those touch points for comms interaction are being implemented. In terms of your recommendation 3B, which has also been partially agreed, the reason being that actually the correct place for comms risks to be flagged as part of project decision and update reports is in the risk assessments, because ultimately the comms points that we're all talking about here are those that involve reputational risk, and the protocol, what the external auditors expect to see, and the part of the report that interfaces with our overall risk register is the risk management implication section of the project template. So, of the report template. So I think we're not disputing for a moment that we do need to see corporate comms input into reports where it's relevant, particularly where there is a risk of reputation management implications needing to be mitigated, but the difference is we believe that the right and proper place for that in those reports is the risk management section. Recommendation 4 is agreed, and I will ask Councillor Shenton when I turn to Cabinet members in a moment just to reinforce or to set out how that's being considered as part of the annual budget setting process. But I think nobody will dispute that there is a need to certainly bring the corporate comms team up to 3.8 full-time equivalent or higher, which is where it was always intended to be. I think that covers the key recommendations. As I say, I do think that Cabinet have been sort of generous in agreeing or partially agreeing all but one. I think that to portray this as some kind of wholesale rejection of a report rather than effectively getting behind 4/5 of what you've put out is wrong. I think that it is right and proper to seek to maintain the proper boundaries between officers and members on this, and particularly on a subject area like comms, the risk is all too stark and present that if we're not careful, we will get to a situation where sort of groups of councillors will want to get involved with sort of every piece of punctuation and the composition of every sentence in a press release, and that's certainly not somewhere where I think it's productive to be. So having responded and set out the Cabinet's view, I'll ask Councillor Sullivan if she has any comments.
Thank you, Chair. So we want to communicate well and efficiently, and the role of scrutiny is vital in that. And it's not negative. You know, we can all take critique and we can all think of different ways of working and moving forward. And I very much enjoyed working with Councillor Allen in that regard, because he's an individual that has some very different ideas, and actually how the three of us worked together was really interesting. And it's not about picking apart officer or member work either, it's about positive steps forward. So with recommendation 1, for me, that was about fail-safes. We have had examples that we had throughout the whole task where there was ways I think that we as an authority could have done it a little bit better. We had an amazing comm that went out about the new pay and display machines. And I think it was just about us having a little bit more time to have a look at that. So we had the email through. I replied within 90 seconds, I believe. And I said, we haven't shouted out the key benefit that these are contactless. And that was the absolute key benefit of these, but it had already gone out because there wasn't that fail-safe buffer for as a member to read that before it went out to the public. So that was just a bit of positive scrutiny there. On recommendation 2, with large projects, how do we know that we've hit that sweet spot of our residents understanding the journey and the point of what we were trying to do, like with the food waste, like with EV charging? How do we know that they understand? And the idea with the panel, in some ways, was when we've done something like the Hertsmere News, do we actually kind of test that out into anywhere to ask, even if that's with staff members who are our residents too, or to members, have we actually got the message across? Because I believe for a Christmas edition, we didn't have any proof in this. This is, to the portfolio holder and their role. But we haven't mentioned about those things that people will be putting in my inbox about seasonal waste, Christmas trees. We don't have green waste collection through Christmas, through the holidays, so a Christmas tree can't be cut up into green waste. We know about that kind of glittery wrapping paper. And I'm just thinking of ways where we can preempt what may come through to customer services. So on 3A, recommendation 3A, it was about that briefing of messaging. And we did have a few examples where expectations may not have been met. And I'm saying that in a very respectful way because we have had key information missing, like incorrect phone numbers or things missing off bin swings. And it's not about picking apart from the past, it's about positive fail-safes for the future. And with 3B, my last point, and with the decision reports updates, like you said, Councillor Newmarket, is about there may be implications like reputational risk, is if there's going to be an increase in complaints, and what are the suite of measures that we're going to put in place to smooth that out for residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, I'll respond briefly. I think a number of those points were covered already. In terms of specifics that people would like to see in any edition of Hertsmere News, and it just strikes me that we don't need a panel or specific circulation of drafts. If there is something that you want to see in a forthcoming edition of Hertsmere News, let the officers know in advance and it will be considered. It's not particularly difficult to send an email with a suggestion. And I don't understand. Sorry, well, if you have a suggestion and you don't send it, you can't expect it to be taken on board. So I don't think we need a panel to enable that kind of feedback to happen. I don't think we need to be circulating drafts to large swathes of members to enable that to happen. In terms of resident feedback and participation, we do have resident panels, or a resident panel that was set up and recruited through the Zen City platform, and all major comms initiatives are tested at early stages and assessed after rollout through that residents panel. And again, it's as representative as any residents panel recruited through that kind of platform can and will be. It's probably imperfect, but it's certainly a group of, I think, about 25 residents that have come forward and volunteered their services, and we're very grateful to them for doing that. And I think, look, finally, nobody disputes the fact that the motivation of Task and Finish Group and members is to help get the message across clearly and more effectively. That's an art. It's not a science. We do employ comms professionals, and at the end of the day, I think it would probably be the definition of sort of recklessness and insanity to not allow our professionals to have the final word when it comes to the detailed implementation of comms rollout. And there is absolutely nothing in terms of our response to these recommendations that prevents any member, particularly sort of group leaders and shadow group spokespeople, from bringing forward suggestions or feedback at any point. I'm going to open up to Cabinet members. If I can go to Councillor Shenton first to address that point about the departmental resourcing in the budget.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, we are, as the report states here, we're very sympathetic to increasing the resource of corporate communications, but we are not in a position yet to know how much money we're going to have next year. The Fair Funding Review is due next week, and that's crucial to knowing whether we're cutting budgets or whether we can go forward with the things that we would like to do. So, yes, whilst we take it on board that it would be a good thing, we have to take the funding and the costs of all of our staffing considerations as a whole. We can't just isolate one thing at a cabinet meeting or a council meeting and take it out, because if we do get an adverse outcome from the Fair Funding Review, we'll be looking at how we can balance the budget and how we would have to cut things that we would like to do. So in principle, yes, we would like to do this. If the budget's provision is good, then that would be fine, but it has to come within the budgeting process. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Giorgio.
Thank you. As the Cabinet Member for Resources, IT and Digital Transformation, I thought it was mentioned obviously around the item 4 as well, that, if we can recruit for that role and we do have the budget to be able to do so, then I'm open to us being able to fill that role, because we are putting out, in my opinion, more information, especially on social media, than ever before. In the Hertsmere News that you've got on the back, it shows all the different platforms that we're now posting to, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, on our website, via emails. People can also call in if they've got any questions for us. And also, as mentioned earlier as well, that those response rates to those calls are also very high at the moment. And so I appreciate that, there might be some people that we're still struggling to get through to, but generally all of us councillors are posting probably 3-4 times a week with various information as well. So I don't necessarily think that there's a problem with the amount of content that we're producing. If anything, even like tonight being live recorded straight onto YouTube, we're probably, if anything, being more open than we've ever been as a council. I just think that, we maybe perhaps having an extra person would help with managing some of that workload, but I also don't want to unnecessarily burden our comms team with having more and more content to produce all the time, and having to manage councillors as a whole in order to produce that content, because at the end of the day we're moving quickly, and it's up to us as councillors to keep up with that change and to help communicate it to our residents.
Councillor Richards.
Thank you. I wasn't planning on saying much, but firstly, the point, broadly the feedback I'm very content with, and I think as a cabinet we are all on board with the output and the feedback. But what I did want to pick up was and this unfortunately is kind of taking things back into a slightly operational matter, so apologies for this, but on the Hertsmere News there are 2 sides of A4 that are dedicated to waste and recycling. A quarter of that content is on reinforcing the messages around the mixed recycling bin, the dry recycling bin, brown bin, which has been, obviously been picked up over the, course of the last few months. No policy has changed. We are just clarifying. What is important, though, in terms of Christmas comes at the same time each year. Yeah, okay. I'm going to send you a link to the FAQ, the page on Hertsmere, which is already, to correct what I said in the previous item, it's already up. Hertsmere website in terms of waste generated by Christmas. But Christmas comes each year, so again, nothing's changed in terms of that, what we do and don't do on Christmas. What is important to note, though, is that the bin collection days do change. Obviously, there's no collection on Christmas Day and Boxing Day. That does necessitate a change in the collection days moving, and it's very, very important that the whole side of A4 is dedicated to specifying which date residents should look out for in terms of their curbside collection. So I just wanted to make that point. We can't put everything in on two sides of A4. The messaging around the days, the dates for the bin collections were deemed to be incredibly important. Thank you. Councillor
Gray.
Thank you, Chair. And it's just a few comments and a few observations, actually, and I'm very pleased that the actual report that came forward was actually based in fact and not fiction. And obviously you had a good evidence base to work off. It's just a shame that wasn't demonstrated in the report, actually, that we couldn't actually see the evidence that kind of steered where this actual review and this task and finish group went. It does strike me slightly odd, Councillor Sullivan's comments about, you know, did we sense check even the Hertsmere News with staff members and people in this building? I'm surely that would have come out in the task and finish group if that question had been asked, so you would have known the answer to that. And again, to Councillor Richards' point, I mean, it's very comprehensive, the list of things that can and can't be recycled, and especially over the Christmas period. You know, your baubles go in the black bin unless they're in good condition, and you may want to kind of gift those to a charity shop. The waste from your crackers go in your black bin, along with the ribbons from your gifts cards and various other bits and bobs. It's all there. It's in black and white, and it's very comprehensive. The only thing that's probably missing from that is coal. And I imagine one or two members in this chamber this evening might be receiving quite a lot of that over the festive season. But apart from that, I fully agree with the report and the recommendations that we've accepted.
Thank you. Councillor Oakley, who is herself a consummate communications professional.
Thank you, Leader, which is why I decided I wasn't actually going to comment on any of this, but I feel that I probably should. I fully support an additional resource for the comms team, because I think if there are any shortcomings, it's been due to a lack of resource, and you know, they do not have unlimited time to be able to tackle every single story that we might actually want to get there, and any comms team need to prioritise what the authority needs to get out to stakeholders. The other thing that I'm going to say is that you cannot run comms by committee. The idea that we could send out press releases for people to nitpick on is utterly ridiculous. I mean, I occasionally write my own quotes, but by and large, we've got a professional comms team, and I let them get on with their job, and that's how it should be. As far as I can recall, the only people that tend to run comms by committee are the Politburo, and let's not go down that road.
Thank you for that, Councillor Oakley. Are there any other comments from Cabinet members? If not, I will draw this item to a close with a few final comments. Look, I think, Councillor Gray, you're right. This was probably the first of a new breed of scrutiny report where you don't actually get the report of the task and finish group. You just get a cover note written by officers. And because we don't seem to get that sort of background detail anymore, obviously sort of taken in good faith Councillor Sullivan's comments that there were apparently sort of all these concerns put forward by residents, but a sort of regular scrutiny report of the form that this council is used to receiving would have sort of set those out, would have enumerated them, would have looked at where they come from, would have analysed them, and would have given us some indication of the quantum of those resident concerns. So it's very difficult to sort of address them without the benefit of a sort of full and proper scrutiny report. Secondly, look, you can't fit everything in Hertsmere News, although this is the Christmas edition. It is I think we have 3 of them a year at the moment, and they're meant to effectively sort of sit there and last on people's coffee tables or whatever it is with key information for that whole period. So I think having too much highly seasonal information is not necessarily the best use of space. We have introduced other more immediate direct communications mechanisms, including the LED display boards that members of your group opposed. But I think that we can certainly use the board that's up on the council offices and the one that will shortly be up in the middle of Boreham Wood to present and promote some additional seasonal messages, things like disposal of Christmas trees and so on. And we are looking at sites and opportunities to place similar boards in the heart of our other major settlements around the borough. But essentially, Hertsmere News is an excellent publication. It is an enduring publication, and one which we've consistently had feedback that residents want to see continue in its present form. And sort of finally, I think really a reminder to all members that they can play a critical role in ensuring the council communicates effectively and in shaping those communications the way they want to see them, because they have their own platforms as councillors, particularly on social media. They can make decisions and choices as to how they use those platforms. I know that many councillors from the groups that form part of the administration do sort of promote and share the official social media postings from the council's channels on all platforms and add their own sort of tone, commentary and additions to it. I know that very few members of other groups do. I know Councillor Sullivan is actually very good at doing this, as is another of the group leaders, Councillor Clapper. But by and large, we do not see members of the opposition groups amplifying those messages. And of course, in sharing them or retweeting them or whatever the terms are on Instagram and TikTok and so on, does give you the opportunity to sort of add to them or produce your own commentary. So we all have agency in this as councillors. We all have a share in the council's communication platform, and I would certainly encourage members to use that agency. We'll now move on to agenda item 8.3, Aberford Park repair of footbridges, and I'll pass to Councillor Myers to introduce this item.
Thank you very much, Chair. This report does exactly what it says on the tin. It's a very simple report. There are 3 footbridges in Aberford Park, one of which has failed and has been closed for the last 6 weeks or so. But all 3 were put in at the same time. So we're proposing that the recommendation is that the Cabinet approve the allocation of £98,000 from reserves to fund repairs to the footbridges in Aberford Park. So it's economies of scale. It's the 3 are there. The 3 are all put in at the same time. One's failed. We'll replace them all. Happy to take any questions, but it really is an incredibly simple report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Cohen.
Yeah, thank you very much. As a local councillor and somebody who used to represent Aberford Park when I was councillor at Meadow, I think we strongly support this investment. Aberford Park is really a great park and one of the cornerstones of Boreham Wood, where families, older residents, dog walkers, teenagers, everybody uses it. And the brook and the bridges are a major part of what makes it special. And the funding we're agreeing tonight will make sure these bridges are safe, accessible and reliable, hopefully for many years to come, which is what residents expect from a park of this importance. But while we're talking about this park, I need to talk about what Councillor Brisky has said about the park, because the park is really important to it, and we're acknowledging it by putting this money in urgently to fix these bridges. When he held his seat, he made the state of the brook a real keynote of his campaign, and residents support it. So what we want to make sure is you give us the clarification. You will make sure that this brook will stop being overgrown, smelly and polluted, like you said. This is a message that landed really well because residents want to see it. I went walking when we did our mitzvah day. Litter pick, the park was beautiful, by the way. We didn't find any litter at all, but the brook wasn't. I mean, we need to find a way to make sure that this brook looks attractive running through the park. This park is great, it's well maintained, and people want the brook to match the quality of the rest of the park. So we fully obviously support the funding of this bridges. Further funding into the park as well is necessary, and thank you for keeping it looking so beautiful.
Thank you, Councillor Cohen. I don't think there's any danger of any of us forgetting what Councillor Brisky said about the park in his first speech upon returning to the council, which is certainly a speech that will be remembered with its hand actions for some time to come. Councillor Sullivan, did you want to come in on this? No. Councillor Myers, and of course I should apologise for thanking Councillor Gray, rather yourself. Apologies for mischrissing you. Do you want to come back?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, no, I take on board exactly what Councillor Cohen's saying. This is money quite beside the money that we're talking about investing into Aberford. That will be a silbid in and of itself. We are working with the Waterways Authority at the moment to come up with a plan for the brook. There, as you'll be aware, having spoken to Councillor Briscoe, I'd imagine that there is a working group ongoing to bring the brook back up to the standard that people expect of it. So that work is ongoing, but this is something quite beside that. Thank you.
Councillor Richards.
Yeah, I think the report's very clear. It's very important that we do this. And it's not just important for the sort of users of the park as in and of itself. The bridges form a key part of the walking, a more sustainable way of getting from A to B in Boreham Wood. And whilst I don't live here, I fully recognise that these are key planks of the local walking infrastructure and cycling infrastructure. Thank you.
You, Councillor Georgia.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Thank you. I very much welcome us improving the bridges in Aberford Park. I think it's really important for residents to be able to cross the bridges in order to travel around Boreham Wood, and also that we're going to be looking, I'm pleased that we're looking closely at the materials that we'll be using to make sure that we're using the most sustainable materials that will last longest, and make sure that the cost of maintenance of this bridge is kept as low as possible while making sure it's accessible for residents. I do wonder about the questions around the actual river itself being polluted, especially when we've had around 14 years of kind of like sewage discharge into our rivers, and some of those sewage discharges have been the worst ever in the UK. But hopefully that river can become or be cleaned and come back up to a much better kind of level once some of the changes come around in the park in the future as that are being planned.
Thank you. Look, I think that the level of investment in our parks and surrounding infrastructure that we've seen over the past couple of years is absolutely phenomenal, surpasses anything we've seen previously, and huge thanks to Councillor Myers for overseeing that. Right. If there are no further questions or points from members, I'd like to invite Cabinet to approve the allocation of £98,000 from our reserve funding to fund the repairs to the footbridges in Aberford Park. Is that agreed? And I'd also like to go backwards slightly, because it occurs to me that I actually forgot to ask Cabinet to formally agree to the recommendations in the previous item, 8.2. Is Cabinet happy to agree that the officer responses for recommendations to the Policy Review Committee's communications, campaigns, task and finish group are agreed as set out in Appendix A to that item, and that the Cabinet considers a recommendation for additional resource with the communications team and agrees that that additional resourcing will be identified as part of the annual revenue budget setting process. Is that agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 9, any other business which the Chair considers urgent. There is none. Agenda item 10, dates of future meetings. Our next meeting will be on the 14th of January 2026, and as this is our last meeting of the calendar year, I'd like to take this opportunity to wish all of our members, officers and residents a very Merry Christmas and a happy, healthy and prosperous New Year. Happy Hanukkah and best wishes to all of those, whatever they're celebrating at this time of year. That concludes the meeting at 6:59 p.m. Thank you very much.